All right. Cool. Welcome to the Cult of Personality podcast. This is the first episode of season 4, and we are here with a very special guest, something I alluded to very vaguely in the last episode of the last season. We are here with the one and only, the punk star, Fish Narc. How's it going today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm more than happy to have you on. I was just talking to you a little before we started the show about how it's really cool to have someone who has been, you know, in this underground scene doing underground things for years. And a lot of people look up to you in the scene, in the underground. I'm over here in New York City, in the New York City underground. People love you. I came to your show that you had recently, and, that was awesome.
Yeah, that shit was crazy, honestly.
Right.
With Bills?
And dude, your stage presence, by the way, I saw you in when Cold Heart came over in October of 2021.
Yeah.
And
The
that,
one where did you seen the rumor that got started from that show that I was like so that somebody was saying like I was so fucked up I couldn't perform, and like I seen people ran with that, but like they just had never seen somebody like move that much during a performance, and it scared them, and they were like Fishmark. They tried to tell Cole, they're like, take Fishmark off the tour. He needs to go to rehab.
what? I didn't see anything about that.
Isn't that funny, bro? Because that was just a normal ass
Bro,
show.
I was just gonna go on to praise your stage presence. I think every time I see you perform live, it's absolutely like nothing ever seen before, at least in my eyes, and I've been to a couple shows. And
Thank
it's so crazy that someone took that and warped it in the completely opposite direction and tried to make it seem like you're like this like unhinged like
you. Shit
man
was
with a
funny.
guitar.
It was funny. That was a cool show. That was kind of a trend. That was like the first show back after the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah, that was exactly. I remember I went and got vaccinated so I can get my Vax card to go attend the show.
Damn. Well, thank you.
Yeah, man, I really did not want to miss out on that. I was like, damn, I gotta do it. I gotta look up for a CVS. Da, da, da. And I was living with my parents at the time, and they weren't really
Hmm.
for the vaccine, so it was kind of like being sneaky too.
Yeah. See, it's difficult with that kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm moved out now, so we're good.
Congrats.
We're doing.
Congrats.
Thank you. We're doing adult things right now, but
Oh man, I'm 31 this year, and I'm really still like taking my baby steps and understanding how to live as an independent adult in the world. So good
yeah,
job.
man.
You got your own place. That's a big deal.
Thank you, Fish. I really appreciate it. It's all a
Well,
work in.
man, I love New York too. New York rocks. It was a home to me for some years, and I'm
You were,
always like, you can never skip New York. You got to go to New York. I'll
yeah.
be
I mean,
back this year. I can't actually say when. Well, I can say when, but I can't say how and why and with who. But I'll be back in the fall.
yes, we need Fish Narc back in New York. You lived over in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, me and Jans and Cody and later Nick Blanco lived in a spot together in Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy. That's what's up. I got some people that just moved to Bed-Stuy actually, so that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm over in Flatbush, so I'm a little over on the
Cool.
on the hood side. But
Yeah.
beyond that, yeah, man, it's that's cool, man. Thank you, by the way. It's all work in progress, I was gonna say with this stuff. So, but this isn't about me. This is about Fish Snark, the punk star. Um, man, I'm a
So,
big.
like,
What's up?
or,
Go ahead.
um, I was just gonna pick up like where we had kind of like we almost got into it before you were recording, but what were you about to say?
Right. Oh yeah. We'll segue right into that. I was just gonna say that, man, I'm a big fan and I got a lot of questions to ask, so this is gonna be a good episode. And we'll segue right into it. We usually most of the podcast, by the way, is like off the top of my head, but we do have like a little semi-structure. Like I have like a first
Sure,
question and stuff. So
sure.
this is gonna segue right into what we were talking to, but let's do the trademark question for the audience.
Let's get it.
Um Fish Narc, the name, the image, the aura, and the energy. How to start, how to get here, and everything in between. Kind of like your whole origin story and where picking up on the juicy details of Fish Narc and the
Sure.
man behind the camera, the man behind the microphone, all of it.
Yeah. So I just like been obsessed with music basically since like I was able to access it by myself for the first time, like as soon as I was, I was born in 92, so my earliest personal access to music that wasn't played by other people was the radio.
Hmm.
Just because of my age, like I was probably one of the youngest people to have experienced that paradigm. But I knew, the second I heard like rock music that I wanted to be a rocker. I wanted to play drums at first. My parents were like, "Oh, it's too loud." And then I was like, "Okay, I want to play bass." And then they were kind of like, my parents are a little older, they're like in their early 70s, and from the original rocker paradigm, they're like, "Oh, you can't play bass. Bass players get no respect," which I think is horseshit. I think bass is like the coolest and most difficult instrument to really play well. And I'm definitely a good bass player now, but that's what got me started on guitar. And I was just obsessed. I pretty much never looked back. And as soon as I was able to get a band together, I did. And this is like I was probably 16, 15, 16. At the time, I was living in Seattle. And this is like 2007, 2008. So the kind of community I was in was this like all ages DIY music scene that had, was a several years in. It was, something that has really kicked off that era in the late 90s, in response to a law that got passed called the Teen Dance Ordinance, which basically, because of some like ecstasy overdose deaths in the raves and the general like square hysteria about raves in the late 90s, they passed this law that banned venues from having underage people in them if drinks were being sold. So it
Okay.
basically made it inoperable for clubs to have all ages shows, which, and this is also at the end of the grunge movement too. So like all this huge amount of musical, social, political capital in the Northwest, it just kind of is undermined. So we're
Yeah.
going into the indie era, like the 2000s, with no all ages shows at the venue. So like a lot of stuff is happening in alternative spaces, YMCA, thrift stores, houses, whatever. And that's the scene I kind of started going to. I was going to high school in the city and commuting from a long way, so I kind of had a lot of unsupervised time. And in that time, I made friends with some older people who worked at the vintage stores, and they invited me to my first DIY shows. Um, and I actually remember the first punk show I ever went to on my own that wasn't like my dad took me to see Rancid or Leftover Crack was Iron Lung, which is a band I still enjoy today. And I got to see them play in the warehouse of a vintage store, and this is in 2006. And it was a cool bill. It really opened my eyes to like what was going on. And in that moment, of age 14, like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play in a band in this like kind of punk, kind of twee, kind of folk, kind of just like mishmash, like early mid 2000s DIY culture. And like this is long-winded, but I needed to set the stage and saying like we had a unique situation because this whole ecosystem was built on basic internet like MySpace and message boards, but not like complicated social media internet.
Yeah.
And also, without the clubs. So the music that people played was a lot weirder, and there was no real economic imperative to make more poppy music. People did really weird stuff.
Right.
And I still love this music from this era. It's totally unperiodized. People haven't written or talked about it very much. And it was a small scene. But really, like one of the most important parts of it was in Los Angeles around a venue called The Smell. It was like a DIY all ages music venue in downtown LA. And a lot of the coolest art music from this period, came from LA, and people knew each other. So those bands would play in our spaces, and the cool bands from our scene would get to play in LA. There was a lot of interchange, and that was like super influential to me. But this kind of scene, I learned first and foremost, like community values. Like a lot of these venues were sober, all ages, activist leaning, run by anarchists. I experienced like people using neo pronouns like in 2007, which I think is a pretty long time before most people were
Yeah.
meeting non-binary people who were using they, them, or Zer and stuff like that. Like that was the kind of space I was in. So, as an adolescent, I'm coming out of high school with this pretty unrealistic idea of what music community should look like because interestingly enough, that whole scene collapsed because during the Pitchfork era, when indie music started to get clout,
Right.
people started realizing they
The
could.
blog era.
The blog era, it kind of and people got tired, and the police started shutting stuff down. And the very end of it came after the Ghost Ship fire in 2016, when the cops on the West Coast pretty much just sweeped it. It was a venue that burned, and a lot of people died. So
Wow.
rest in peace to all of them. That's when the end of that era was. So like the blog era did stuff too. It honed people's marketing, and there was way less like just free for all random shit. And that was, I played in bands this entire time basically. So it's playing DIY shows, booking shows on MySpace, booking shows word of mouth, um, and like doing my very best to like play in this like smaller universe of punk,
That,
folky, whatever it was.
that's
But like,
I think
what's
it's
up?
hold not to like cut you off.
Oh no.
I think it's really cool before anything that you really set up this scene and like really set up the story. Really, you articulate yourself very well about everything. But I knew that there had to be some story within your upbringing and being in the West Coast, especially somewhere like Seattle, right after the grunge movement. I knew there was definitely like a story because I feel like Seattle and the whole Washington state was kind of a cultural pinpoint in that time
What?
period for rock music.
And
And
stop being one. And seriously, Seattle is one of the worst major cities to be an underground artist in. It has no support structure for indie artists at all. The club owners don't give a fuck. The audiences barely know what's going on. Like Capo EXO, for example, he's like a really great underground artist. He's from Seattle. He is lives there. He plays locally, and people fuck with him crazy, like they do. But he's an artist that if he was like the very same guy in the same way from like a different major city, he would have way more resources. It would be way easier to do what he does. It's just crazy. Like me and Mac Ned left Seattle because we couldn't get booked, even though we were hella popping. Like no one at the time was like, "Oh, look at they have like a lot of SoundCloud plays and people love them. Like we should book them." They were like, "Oh yeah, I don't know. This is risky. Hip hop shows. You know how that goes." Ooh. And I mean, it's
that's
no
so
secret that the
crazy.
club circuit in Seattle is racist. And like maybe
Wow.
they're working on it now, but it was way, way harder, especially because the side of GBC we were in was also the Thrax side, and it was very like based in West Seattle, and like not everybody was an emo artist. Like there was a lot of street artists too,
Right.
and like the crowd was like just more black people, and like honestly, the promoters in Seattle stopped booking MacNed and I and anybody else from Thrax really at a certain point, which was it was fucked up. Like we moved to LA, and the week we got to LA, we did that show at the observatory with Peep and everybody that was like 1,000 people, and they knew our songs, they knew who we were, and we were just like, oh, yeah, we were
It's
just in
so
the wrong place.
it's so crazy that a state away is like super fucked up, like almost like tyranny, like super fucked up, oppressive against artists. And then you go a state down and it's like super progressive, like pop in immediately.
I wouldn't even say it is. It just was like there's actually infrastructure for rap
Right,
culture in LA like there wasn't in Seattle. But like I mean, that was the thing. Like the teen dance ordinance came at the end of the grunge movement, and
right.
like the grunge movement was like happening simultaneously with the like Riot Girl musico social movement. And honestly, like grunge is kind of like an emo trap or a hyperpop sort of term. It really described like an aesthetic sound that listeners
Yeah,
could
because
could associate together, but it didn't actually reflect the like musico social arrangements of the communities like that were producing it. So like
right.
I live in Olympia, and there's still remnants of that scene here. Like it's kind of still alive in many ways through older people and through new generations, although it's less direct than it would seem. Um, but yeah, like I grew up in the post grunge era, listening to radio stations, listening to rock music on the radio. So I just really came up listening to butt rock and like also grunge and also like whatever, like the first rap I really like connected with that was on the radio was hyphy, and that was the most popular at the time because the Bay is so close and there's so much social and like cultural connection with the Bay.
Right.
But like, yeah, so like the picture I was trying to paint with all of that is basically like through the blog era up until about 2013, like I was just in bands that were very DIY oriented, and then one that was slightly more like blog oriented, trying to go for the cloud, trying to get
Right.
signed, excuse me, etc. And that really imploded around when I was finishing college, and like I just didn't have relationships with any of my bandmates anymore, and I was kind of like, man, fuck this. Like at the time, like the drummer of my band, which was called Howsu, people want to listen. Our record is actually going to be 10 years old in June, and I
Yo,
think it aged extremely well.
it's so great that you mentioned that because one of my favorite songs from like your, any of your pieces of work, beyond Fish Narc and stuff is, was it Gardenia? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, yeah, it's that I wrote that when I was 18.
Man,
So old.
that's been one of my favorite tracks for years, and I don't mean to like fan out, but I was playing it yesterday or the day before, and I've been anticipating this interview, and I was just like, that's so dope. Like I want to mention this track, and it's so great that we mention it right now.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you listened to it. I think it's good. I honestly think the whole album is crazy. But it was socially so difficult because like we didn't like each other and we were not like they weren't very nice. I'm like cool with everybody again, but they were pretty fucking mean to me at the end and like it just hurt a lot. And I was writing lyrics that were like more mystical, like just more like verbose because I didn't want to reveal how I feel. Like I
Right.
was
Like
how I felt like I was couldn't be vulnerable with my bandmates, so the music just became arcane. So when the drummer quit and he was going to do techno on Ableton, I was like, well, I should learn Ableton too because like I thought he was a cool guy and like he knew what was cool, and if that was what he was doing, I wanted to learn it or copy him or something.
right.
So also like we were close friends with Craft Spells, which is a really good indie band of that era, and Justin whose band it is, he made the whole everything on Ableton. He was the first one I knew who did it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you don't need anything. Like I made the Idle Labor with like just in my bedroom." And he gave me his crack of Ableton. This is 2013. So I didn't have to buy it. I could just use it. And I learned it and fucking terrible at computers. I was not really a tech person. Like in this whole story, I've never really been on the computer very much. Like a little
Right.
bit in college to type out my like thesis, and like I learned Photoshop in my senior year, but like that was the first time I had learned a computer program was Photoshop, and that was in 2013. So when I'm starting Ableton, I am not very computer literate beyond word processor and like surfing the net. So like, it took
Yeah.
me a while. This is really long form, bro. Do you want me to like shorten this up?
No, no, no. You can keep it going. There is no limit to any of this.
All right. So like I'm like learning Ableton, and I'm also focusing on making like visual art, sculpture, and installation and sound art, and I'm experimenting a lot with like noise and pedals and tape loops and just looper pedal, and I'm recording these like I've started smoking weed for the first time, in my life really, and I'm making these like this drony noise music. Like I'm listening to a lot of music like Coil and the skaters, and I ended up meeting one of them, Spencer, and he gave me some keyboards because like I would book shows in my college and get a lot of money from the school to book random avant-garde music, and so it was like he gave me these keyboards, kind of like thank you.
That's awesome. I have a friend, actually, it's funny, from Tacoma, and he does like something similar to that. He's around my age, so he's doing
Oh,
that
that's
now.
like
That's pretty
my
cool.
grandpa's from Tacoma.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny. I was gonna go back really quick before you mention anything
Go
else.
ahead.
I have a couple friends that are all from around the Tacoma, Seattle area, and I very much seen it firsthand or secondhand, I should say, like watching my friends struggle to kind of get booked in that area, and they end up having to go to whole different states and stuff to find some sort of infrastructure. So I didn't know that was a long-term issue. So
It's
that
a
was something.
serious problem.
Yeah,
It doesn't make any sense because we have indie radio, we have sub pop, there's like it should be a great place to be an underground artist, but it's
you would
fucking
think, right?
terrible.
Yeah,
Fucking
it's
terrible.
crazy, but yeah, just wanted to put that out there before we continued forward.
For sure. No, it's culturally rich and there's a lot of great artists and great minds and a lot of inspiration here. It's just really hard to like make a business out of it or like get people to I don't know, to take it beyond a certain level is very hard. I couldn't
Yeah,
do it. I had to leave.
right.
Um, but yeah, so like I'm gonna kind of speed up. I'm going into too much detail here. Like I was just making like industrial and noise and drone stuff, and like I started calling myself Fish Narc on Instagram as a joke. Pisces Narc was just something we were colloquially calling people who were a bad time or bummer. And I also was like studying semiotics and art history and was very kind of pretentious. And I was like, fish and narc, it's two nouns, and most people's names are like adjective noun, you know? And I
Right.
was like, my name is a list, you know, my name is fish, water, rat, snake, foot, shell, mouth, narc, and fish narc just for short, you know, but it's all a noun. So it's de-hierarchized. This is just what I thought, you know, I was like 21 and like just, you
Super
know, full of
deep.
high ideas and thinking I was so artsy and smart, you know. And honestly, I think like a lot of the stuff I was doing was definitely cool and I respect it. It's just pretentious a little
I
bit.
mean, I mean,
That's how I
for
got the name.
14-year-old me looked up to your early, like I've gone through your whole like discography, like just being a kid and trying to find music and stuff, and literally like thought like, wow, this is a genius. So
I'm glad you thought so.
it stands well to this day. But yeah, that's
That's cool.
awesome. And
Well, I
it's
hope it, you know, it would encourage you to try random stuff because most of that stuff was like those are just my first attempts at learning a new media.
yeah,
You know, a lot of the times that's my whole project is like, oh, I want to learn a media. I want to learn how to use this setup. I want to learn how to write X type of song. And like once I get a couple of them, then I'm satisfied and I move on. I think that's why my stuff changes project to project. Is like it's just me figuring something out. So like I'm never like it's never really polished. Or if I polish it, I'm kind of just trying to clean it up a little bit.
right.
But I really appreciate that. I'm glad you listened back. You know, I had to get a lot of these ideas out to get where I was at, you know.
Yeah, man.
That pretty much led me to making beats and I lived in LA for a bit where I connected with Tracy and he was the first person to get on any of my stuff. What he got on originally was just a loop for an industrial track I was making. And that
Didn't
really
didn't
set me
that
on
be
the path of making beats for other people.
when Tracy hopped on that became neurotic, no? Was that
Yeah, that's
what
the
came
one.
out of it? Yeah. Very
Neurotic.
awesome.
Really cool and like very fortuitous also. Just a lucky thing that happened. Right place, right time. We had a connection as friends, but we hadn't I just was making techno and other weird noise. It wasn't like I was making beats, so we weren't collabing, we just hung out, you know.
Yeah.
Changed my whole shit up and when I moved away from LA, I actually moved back with he came with me to Seattle. He didn't stay very long, but we drove back together and I was living at home again just really learning how to make beats, going crazy, trying to get really good at Ableton. And that's when I started like hanging out with MacNet all the time because I was Thrax House, GBC, and I was back from LA, and there wasn't that much going on in Seattle. So like we ended up hanging out a lot because we clicked. You know, he and I we don't talk all the time, but whenever we talk, it's like easy as fuck. We just it
Right.
clicks right
It's like
back
kind of like
in
picking up where you left off.
type. And in this period, like he and I were just hanging out. You know, I was not always making the best beats, so we weren't making a ton of songs quite yet. But after about a year, we started making a lot of music together, and a lot of it was really good. We were setting the stage for what we were going to do in LA, and I was getting ready to. I didn't know it yet. Make my best beats. So it's kind of like gym time. We were just in Seattle. I worked at the Vera Project's all ages venue. It was a desk job, so I was my mind was free all day. Um, and I was just going hard, man. I made songs with Stunna Man from the Pack, who goes by Jaleel Nzinga now. But he was also my Keith Jennings, and that was a big milestone for me because I loved the Pack so much growing up. Just getting my confidence up, and at the end of that period, Peep had me come down to LA to make guitars for him and Smoke a Sack. Um, and
And
I
this
hung out with
is
him and Gab
this
Three like
this
the
is
whole
like around
time.
like this is like around like 2017, right?
Yeah, this is January 2017 and March 2017. I was done there. That's when I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. Because Pete, I didn't, I was up in Seattle, so I didn't really get to know him that well in the beginning. So I wasn't like that hype on him joining the group. I was like, who's this guy? I don't know him. Like, I was a little jealous because, Tracy and I weren't as close at that point, and he was clearly so close with Pete. I was like, oh, he wants to be friends with this guy. So
Yeah.
like it was a
The
little bit of a slow burn with
collective,
me,
like
I guess.
collective politics, you know?
It's collective politics. So people really wanted to win me over, and he did. So I realized, like, I was like, oh my God, this kid is insane. A, insane at music. B, like the sweetest, and like clearly like he was putting effort forward to like be friends with me, and I'm not the type to reject that. Like I'm when
Right.
people are like showing me that, I like always want to reciprocate, especially if I like them, and I did. So I got back from that trip just like, oh shit, I gotta quit my job. I gotta get my beats gotta be 10 times as good. And
Yes. Stepping the game up.
in that month, that's when I made like a bunch of the beats for that would be on Horsehead's album, and a lot of the guitar stuff that no one's actually heard it. There are some Gabe and Peep demos that didn't get fully sung out. I probably smoked the sarcasm, but I really that was when I was like, okay, I have a style. I know what to do. I'm gonna focus on guitar beats. I'm gonna focus on playing in the way that like I learned in house to, not just like simplified stuff. And I'm not gonna sample, and it's not gonna be emo. It's just gonna be my style.
Right.
That's when I really started to like put my foot down on the style. Um, and push came to shove. Like I moved to LA in April of that year, and just full grind mode. That story has been told, but basically, like that was kind of when the current Fish Narc took took first real format. Like that was who I was. That was what I was doing. It was my job, and I had to make it work. I couldn't say I was doing anything else, and I wasn't halfway in or halfway out. It was all the way, and I
Right.
was committed. And really, like, it's funny because like I was getting good at beats to be Peep's producer. He wanted me around all the time at that whole summer. Like we made those songs and like hung out constantly and listened to songs constantly and made plans for the future. And so when he passed, it was so shocking. And I didn't understand musically because I only thing I had after that was music. Like there was so much we were going through so much, grieving our friend and dealing with like being unfairly scapegoated by the management company.
Oh,
And I don't want to go into it, but like
yeah.
all I had was music, so I threw myself into making songs and beats, and they were great. But like I didn't, I kind of like it took me a while to realize like I was just working, and with respect to my collabs with everyone else, like truly like even though I made a lot of great beats after Pete passed, like that was really the end of it for me. Um, at least competitively, and I tried very hard afterwards and it would be bullshit to say I wasn't actively trying to do it in a careerist and competitive way afterwards for a year or so. But I didn't. It was until I got the breathing space to understand like how I needed to relate to music after such a like earth-shattering event for me as a person as well as me as an artist, because obviously like the personal is more important because like it's a human life and a human friendship. But
Right.
musically, like I was gearing up to play live guitar for his band. We were going to finish the album. Goth Angel Center was going to be a full album. I needed to make those beats, and I was kind of like ready to do like that was I had a vision for the future, and when that stuff fell apart, it was hard to know what to actually do. And I think
Yeah.
the clarity came when it was time to start writing Wildfire. I had just made this album with the Spanish emo rapper Goa, who's the first emo rapper from Spain. And I would say our album is probably the first full album in the genre in
Shout
Spanish,
out
which I'm
Goa.
really proud of. But he and I had some disagreements about how it should go. And because I wasn't the vocalist, I wasn't given the right to do much. And I had written a lot of it. So I was kind of pissed. So I started to write my own songs again. And I remembered I had said when I quit being in the band, I was like, I will go back to being in a band when I can make beats for other people and they're really good. And I realized, okay, I was like, I achieved that. So it's time to write my own music again. Um, yeah, like kick started
This
writing
is
like
like
wildfire songs and
I was
stuff
gonna
like that.
say,
And
yeah.
fast forward, like I'm kind of full band mode again, even though we are still doing it with the rap performance way. And I still write and record in a way that's much more I say like more Kasher Kwan than Sonic Youth.
Yeah. I would like I would say like still like you carry yourself like your songwriting and approach and everything like still very individualistic rather than like as like a band concept, or do you consult with like your fellow like bandmates when it does come to like any of your lyrical content and stuff like that?
Never lyrics, but sometimes music. Like I like writing with Emma, and I like to write with Dorian and Jans. Obviously, I've done the most work with Jans, but I am trying to increase like the collabs. It's just something I do like by myself when I want to, and if I lived in the same place as anybody. I mean, Emma and I do. We work on songs together. We're doing it a lot more recently because we live in the same place. But if I lived in the same place as Jans, I know I'd write more with him. It's just a geography thing.
Yeah, I feel you, you know. It's really hard to collaborate when everyone has their own stuff going on and everyone's so far away. I me and my friends kind of learned that like in a really dramatic way, I guess, growing up, you know, being a kid, you have all the free time in the world, and then you grow up and we're all adults now, everybody got school or work, and
Yeah, for real.
so, you know, it was like heartbreaking even. It was like, oh, you know.
It's a
And
tough one.
I can only
Definitely,
imagine it like continues on obviously as life progresses and stuff.
it does. It does. In like the longer you're in it, the more adversity you have to face, and like the more times you choose to go through with it and to not do something else. Like I've been realizing this, like facing things that seemed existential to me very recently, like fielding thoughts of can I do this? Can I continue to do this in this way? Like every time like you step over another hurdle, you're like, well, yeah, it's like this is so crazy to keep doing it. Like if I wasn't supposed to be doing it, then it would be so illogical what I'm doing right now that I have to believe like
That
I'm
it's
in
for
it for the
something
long
else,
haul
you
because
know?
like
Yeah.
it's so stupid to keep doing. It's but it is the thing. It's the thing for me. So
It's like kind of crazy. It's kind of just like life, man. It's like opportunities just open up and you wouldn't believe it if you was told to you on paper or like, you know, but it's just like your path, where you're meant to go, what you're meant to do. Yeah. Um Moving forward though, or is there anything more you have to say when it comes to like
no,
the
no, I tried to wrap that up. I realized how long I was
No,
rambling.
no, no. That was honestly great because the thing with your story and stuff like that and where you've been and what you've done and you know the legacy that you stand on now and you continue to create, it's cool, it's inspiring for even me listening to, you know, and I'm here doing this podcasting. I really don't make music as much as I once did, but it's inspiring and it's cool to listen to, and you know it's cool. I don't know, it really just it sets the stage for who Fish Narc is, you know. It really gives like this really great, you articulate yourself well, great portrayal of, you know, inspirations and where you come from and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I really want to like I feel like, part of the desire to do that comes from having my like identity and character so like misrepresented by people online and not really being able to affect my own narrative that like when I get a chance to speak on it, I really want to like paint the full picture and give details and like to like make it worth it to hear what I gotta say.
Yeah, and it's crazy because some people on the internet, man, are just like I feel like they're just dead set on warping, like you know, like
Yeah.
people who are like chronically online or whatever you want to call it, you know, like they already have a warped perception of reality and they just try to come at people sideways because why not? And it's just like, you know, we're human beings. Like, what are you doing? You know,
No, I
as
hear you.
the judgmental environment that is social media. It's like, ugh.
Yeah. It's designed to foment conflict, really.
Yeah, and you know, it's hard to like you gotta just you know, it's hard to stay chill when you know, but
That is a fact. It's hard
yeah,
to stay chill when you're online.
yeah,
That's
you
like
know,
that's kind of poetic.
it's hard to stay chill, and it's something that's supposed to be entertaining and relieving, but I feel like it creates so much hostility in everyday lives, everyday people. But moving forward, there's another question I like to ask my guests on the pod. We kind of touched on it. I mean, a little just talking about your come up and or upbringing and stuff like that. But it's really just more to shed light on your inspirations musically, other artists or even friends, anything or even anything outside of music that inspired you to create. I mean, you kind of discussed it a little, but you know, really just focusing on specific sources of inspiration.
Sure. I like a lot of music and like what I listen to fluctuates a lot from moment to moment, month to month. I've kind of been realizing that because I like to improvise and I like to just try to, go off the cuff and come hit like go when the inspiration strikes, that what I really need to do to like charge my music is to like live a balanced life with other stuff in it. And like that means spending a lot of time for me outside. I've spent a lot of time learning about plant ecology and mushrooms, mycology, how to care for plants, inside and out, and landscaping, and also do, work for my family members when they need help with stuff. And I try to give myself time to recharge so that when I get back into the studio, I'm like pick it up and I don't think, and then I just go. So like I am influenced by like a lot of music, but it's funny because like right, you don't hear almost any of it in my records. Like they don't really sound like what I listen to a lot of the
Hmm.
time. I listen to like Norteño and um R&B,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? And like I don't know, I've been listening to like Kekta Rock and Wolves in the Throne Room and Chalino Sanchez and stuff. Like it's like doesn't it's not you don't hear it in my music at all, and
Yeah.
I don't think I'm not influenced by it, but I also don't know exactly how I am.
I
So it's
think
like
what's
I just gotta give myself the time and the space and the room to like so that when I go to improvise that something cool comes out.
Yeah, I mean, what's cool with that and all the different type of artists you name and stuff is like, and this is how I carry myself too when it comes to just even what I like to listen to on my day to day is like, it's a very great variety. And I think even if you're not taking direct inspiration from it, it also, it does help like just I feel like creatively approaching a new project or a new song or something, just having fresh ideas, or fresh something in your head to just work with.
That's true. And then real life, like I've gotta have some like experience under my belt to like
Right.
have it mean anything.
Right. Lyrics of substance, you have to have some sort of like fuel behind the fire, some sort of memory or, I feel you. I understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, when I'm not anybody. I talk about like my musical stuff on the pod a little bit, but I'm not anybody special when it comes musically. But when I have created music, I think a frustration I had, like being a kid creating music, was I was always stuck in my room. I never had much to write about because I was, same mundane. It was, mundane, however you say it. It was very mundane. So I feel you. And that was just me relating. Beyond that,
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like as a
you
kid,
know?
like you're like struggling to like or like kids who write music and you're like you don't know what you're singing about. I heard a
Yeah.
lot of that shit like during the pandemic when so many, you know, 15, 14 to 18-year-olds were dropping crazy music. I was like sounds really good and I'm like extremely impressed and amazed, but also like you are not doing these things or you have
It's
not.
like it's yeah,
Some of them for sure had, but I just know like when I was a teenager writing songs, like my songs were like about like one of the songs I wrote when I was a kid was like thanking the various people who gave me free stuff from their jobs. Like which
focusing on the littlest niche thing to write about. Man. Yeah, that's pretty much what it came down to, bro. Like writing just like the only things that were in your life because you have nothing as a kid, it's just same shit, school. And I worked as it was funny. Too funny. But yeah, man. Um, no, yeah. Moving forward though, or what I want to say, it's great that you mentioned things like R&B and like Chalino Sanchez and shit with your inspirations because like, you know, I don't know. I My love for music is unconditional. I love everything from country to funk to jazz to all of it. So it's just I
yeah, I
don't
like
know.
all that shit too.
It's always cool to have a conversation with someone else with the same like admiration and appreciation for music.
Hell yeah. And I'm not even the biggest listener anymore, which I'm trying to fix. Like doing it for a job kind of turned listening into a part of work, and I'm really working to like unfuck that part of my brain where I'm not thinking about music in terms of like influence or like readiness to hand as like something to like be influenced by or to like use. it really fucked my brain up, and I'm kind of working on getting it back. But that's like why I listen to so much music that I couldn't put into my own music or wouldn't necessarily like because it's more relaxing and a little bit less like fraught. You know,
Yeah.
one of my favorite artists is Sade, like many people probably feel, and I just find her music extremely soothing and like enjoyable to listen to. And that
Yeah.
really is like what like I'm not sure if like I'm inspired by the music I listen to. That's kind of the funny thing. Like it sounds pretentious because like it sounds like I'm trying to say like I'm like this wizard who can like pull it out of the ether, which is not really it. It's just more like everything is this like mass of like signification that doesn't actually have any real contour or like boundary. And then like I just have to like balance my like feelings and self so that when I go to record or write that like it's not like the some kind of like deeper energy that is like also not inside of me that is somehow channeled through me. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to make this not sound mystical, but I'm
No, I
choosing the
mean,
wrong words because
even
it's so mundane. It's really just like eating and sleeping and like living and like making sure I have made enough time for everything that when the time comes, then I'm just doing it. Like the joy of like music is like not for my identity anymore. It's more like just loving sound.
yeah, I feel you. I mean, it's something that I don't know if this is exactly what you were trying to say, but like something I thought of, or like I thought, like I don't know, I guess a rhetoric that I thought of was like, listening to music, but not taking like anything from anybody else, and putting it into your music, and still approaching music with your own original creative approach, rather than like carrying someone else's like, I don't know. That was like
Oh,
something that,
I want to copy people so bad. I would probably be like in a better place if I was good at it, you know. I
yeah,
wish I was better at being intentional. I think like honestly I could even work on that. Like I would love to just go down and be like, I'm gonna write X type of song and then do it, you know. But it's just like my brain doesn't go that way because like I'm definitely not above it, you know.
yeah. It's yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I approaching music. Some people, I don't know. Some people are better at that than others. I can't do it. I try to keep like a very original thing.
Hmm.
Beyond that, moving forward, um, I wanted to ask you about things beyond music and stuff like that. I did want to talk a little bit more about your mushroom knowledge, but I really want to talk about something that popped in my head that I want to catch while taught. You're fashionably, I think you're very original and out there, and I'm very. I think fashion wise, you're very dope. So I wanted to talk about like kind of like inspirations in just who you are, the appearance, the energy, the aura of Fish Narc, kind of like in the physical world, our shells. What is fashion inspirations or just anything inspiration for your look? And it might be a weird question. I don't know.
No, no, I honestly feel like I fell off with clothes for the last couple of years, but I am trying to get back into it.
I mean,
Um,
even I used to. I mean, I follow your Depop, and I've seen some of your stuff that you. I feel like was like DIY stuff that you made, man. So like, I know like
oh
fashion
yeah, I
wise,
definitely did a lot of that. I
fashionably
mean,
inclined.
it came from thrifting mostly. Like high school, I just thrifted everything and like it was kind of a thing with my friends, like because we hung out at these in these random like DIY show contexts with these like funny, you know, loudly dressed older millennials who were in their early 20s at the time and were teenagers who were like wearing like day glow bright neon tacky shit, like kind of what you see from that era. Like we were teens with even less context, so we just picked out the loudest, like giant shirts, like 5X shirts that went past our knees and skinny jeans, like crazy neon stuff. Like we just went nuts. Like it was a free for all. Skinny
Yeah,
jeans though, you know, and as like I went to school and college or whatever, like kind of just like dressed down a little bit. I was more influenced by like the artsy like scholar pools. So like then afterwards is when I was wearing the coolest stuff. I was back in Seattle and I was thrifting again. So, and I also was kind of like feeling like, oh, I wasn't, you know, I was still like 19, 20, like realizing I wasn't necessarily cis and like was understanding myself, not really understanding myself to be non-binary at that point, because I didn't really know what that truly didn't know exactly what that was, even though I had experienced other people who had identified that way. And
Right.
that really influenced how I dressed for like a number of years, and still does. Um,
Wow, that's so
so I wore like a
crazy.
lot of like women's clothes, and like was trying to bend other men's clothes or kids' clothes, and like I was altering stuff a lot, just trying to get it to make my body look more feminine or slighter, which wasn't necessarily the healthiest way of doing it. Um, but I did put a lot of really cool fits together, and like that stuff was underpinned by like being more of like a trad punk style when I was younger and sewing patches onto my clothes. So like I was always sewing or safety pinning like random stuff to other stuff, and like it didn't look exactly like punk fashion, but it was definitely inspired by it. I think those are my coolest fits. Like I unarchived some fit pics on my Instagram, like they're all the way at the bottom, but from that era that I think were some of the best. I was also like influenced by like Young Bruh style, who was also a thrifter, and at this time people hadn't realized how cool he was. So like it wasn't like everybody was jocking, and like I didn't exactly jock, but like was just influenced by it. It's kind of fresh at the time, like
Yeah,
Ed
I mean,
Hardy,
you guys
White
always had your own.
Horses.
You guys always had your own swag. I think that was like it was the coolest shit. So
That dude, that was partially why I think he and I clicked so hard, was because we had crazy clothes that looked cool together and were different from each other. But yeah, like the last couple of years, I just was like so focused on being outdoors that I just wore my clothes into the ground, and like most of my old stuff has fallen apart, like that I've been kind of wearing since I was 20. Turned
right.
30 last year, and like most of my clothes had kind of disappeared. Like I had a lot of people like stole clothes from the house in New York, or just would borrow them and never give them back. And like that was kind of the thing in the SoundCloud era. Million people there, somebody on the couch, somebody wants to borrow clothes, then they're out of town, you never get it back. It's like
Yeah.
I wore my shit out, and then I'm just starting to buy clothes again, like this last month, because like none of my shit fit anymore. I gained some weight, all my shit is busted or doesn't fit, so I'm
Yeah.
like on the reacquisition. I'm also bald, so it's like I kind of got depressed and like didn't want to style myself that much because like I hadn't decided to shave my head and my hair was really thin. So like yeah, like fashion is a little fraught for me. I wish I was more into it, and I'm trying to get back into it. It does matter, and I feel great when I'm wearing a good fit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm exactly the same way. And you even struck a chord with me going about the 19, 20-year old like gender identity thing. I feel you in the same exact way, like literally word for word, bar for bar. I feel you. So it's definitely it's cool that that played into it. I feel you the same way. Even like trying to experiment and even add more femininity into the look and
Yeah,
stuff like
just
that.
being androgynous was always the goal, and like my body is not shaped in a way that I can like accept really right now, but for that like styling, but I am accepting like the way it looks and like trying to style it in a different way. I don't know. I'm not seeing gender in as performative of terms as I used to, and now it feels more like perspective and ideology. And like I know that's like maybe fraud, like doesn't people wouldn't always agree with that, and like I understand like sex and gender are two separate concepts, but
Right.
like having to like lean into like the gendered interpretation of my sexed body,
Yeah.
even if I don't fully identify with it, and how I'm like dressing lately, and realizing like it doesn't feel as awkward as I thought it would, but it's like it's just like two sides of the same coin.
I
But I'm
understand
not
it.
trying to be binarist with it. I'm just trying to say like since I gained weight and lost all my hair, I've just been like putting on bigger clothes, and like I'm trying to not look at it through the eyes of like majority perception of gender, which is
Right.
to say that people would be like masculine, sex male body, what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
There's no
But more
label
like
to it though. You're
I
just
have
being
more of a
you.
mass presentation now because it makes me like pay less attention to my body, which helps me move in space like more comfortably.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter how people perceive me. And like that's kind of the thing, is like when I was first thinking, realizing that about my identity, like it mattered to me how I was perceived. But now I would rather not be perceived that much, and like other people just watch me perform at a show, listen to the song, but like other than that, I kind of want to fly under the radar.
Yeah, and I get you, man. And yeah, it's not like there's nothing like yeah. It's really that's really cool. I relate. That's why I'm even like speechless almost like I can relate to you 110%, in certain ways when it comes to just like societal shit and interpretations and perception and stuff. And I think me still being a young person, I get very frustrated with perception because I just like being me. And being me is very androgynous in a way. So
That's great, and it's annoying when people pay too much attention. When it's funny, it's annoying when they don't pay any attention, and it's annoying when they pay too much attention. It's just like I don't know. I know what you mean, and
yeah.
like you get a lot of negative attention when you are a sex male and like show certain parts of your body with outfits or like wear things and like I honestly it's crazy. Like I when I was dressing more androgynous, like I got roofied at bars and stuff, and that has never happened since.
Wow.
I like was like this as I'm like, and I honestly don't feel like my style is extremely masculine. It just is more than it used to be. So it's but as it veers towards mask style, like I just have way less interactions. And my girlfriend says like I like attract random interactions with people, which is funny because I do, but dude, you should have seen it when I was like more femme presenting. Like it was nonstop.
Wow. Yeah,
So it
that's
definitely,
insane.
it comes with like a lot of like. So it's really fucking annoying when people don't get it. It can't leave you alone when you want to get left alone.
Yeah, it's crazy that there's even such societal factors that come with people just being them and having to do with, being presenting however they want to present. It's just, it's a crazy world we live in when you think of it, and then you have to like, actually like process that that's reality and stuff. But yeah, man, I feel you. I relate to like it's crazy that it's like crazy surreal right now. Like I'm talking to Fish Narc, and honestly, like I'm not trying to fan out, but like I've been listening to you since I was like 14. That's what like six years, and I'm here being like very transparent, vulnerable, more than I probably have on the show or ever beyond like my personal life about all this stuff. So it's really cool. It's really crazy.
Hell yeah.
Hell
Well, I'm
yeah,
glad to
Fish
hear.
Narc here on Cult Personality. Moving forward though, what I want to talk about, you have an upcoming album, and by the time this uploads or when I release your album will probably be coming right out. However, I decide to upload this.
Nice.
Tell us about that. It's called Fruiting Body. Yes.
Yeah, Fruiting Body. Hopefully June 1st. Just kidding. Definitely June 1st. Coming out June 1st. All platforms. The whole thing is executive produced by Keyblade 808, who's from Seattle but currently lives in New York City. He's like a great artist and a friend of mine.
Shout out
Who's also
Keyblade.
kind of like both rocker and SoundCloud. I really like that. I love his style. He made all the beats, most of them by himself, sometimes with loops from me, sometimes with loops from other people. Jan's mix and master. The vibe, like the first single, "It Burns," came out on Thursday and it has a video, and like the next one's gonna come out on Thursday the 18th, called "New Gaze," and it'll have a video. Um, and like the album is kind of that vibe. It's more like 80s, clean guitar, post punk. There's some rap and like dance parts,
Okay.
but I feel like Keyblade really did it seamlessly. And when you hear the album like all the way through, it's just gonna feel really like casual. Even though there is some hybrid music, I've also tried to like make my most like you could listen to it all in one setting and it doesn't change vibes. Like my other records, they go through a lot of different moods and vibe shifts, and this one I was trying to
Keep it consistent. Like
stabilize it, keep it consistent.
yeah, that's awesome. That's really exciting, actually. So this is gonna be like, I not like, or I say like the approach that you had is like rather than like what would it be? A compilation of different songs or different vibes. It's like one ongoing vibe, one ongoing even like story. Lyrically, what was the inspirations behind the album, or do you want to keep that a surprise for when it comes out?
No, I'm down to talk about it. Well, like the title track, "Fruiting Body" is like a term for a mushroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's like because mushroom is like the reproductive organ of the fungus. That's like it just comes up to do sexual reproduction, and then as it disappears, it's not an essential organ. Um, so like I was kind of like talking on that song "Fruiting Body" about wanting to, when I died, rather than to be cremated, to like reintegrate with the environment, to have my like to see myself as like an equal, piece of like massive energy and carbon, like that can be like a part of something that is bigger than me. And like I've hung out with some mycologists, and they have a phrase like "what decomposes never dies." Is like just looking at my body like that is like coherent and singular for now, but like only temporarily, and also like to be close to nature and close to like plants and like in the soil, like
That's
be the
yeah, that's
soil,
awesome.
so like it felt spiritual in that sense. And like the record touches on like kind of like similar like feelings of alienation and in various like ways. Like I know I'm not making it sound really good right now. It's just
No, I mean I'm very intrigued. I think it's funny because I've even like when you talk of death and stuff like that. I mean it's a funny conversation, but I've talked about like how I want to go. And it's crazy, like the fruiting body going back into the earth on some like Lion King shit. But it's really
right.
cool. It really is like an energy thing. It harvests energy. It's a real thing. So that's cool. I'm intrigued.
You give
It's
your energy back, like they talk about that with like when a giant tree falls over, like it becomes a nurse log. And like it's been hoarding carbon, it's been hoarding energy, it's been sequestering it within itself, and then it falls and redistributes that, and like all kinds of life comes up after it. It's like I don't know, I like that. I thought it felt beautiful, and like it felt like not it's like less there's less despair in this record than in Camouflage or Wildfire. It's more like it just has like, man, like lyrically it's also like probably my most candid and like least poetically hidden. Like I was really trying to be equally clear, and to the point. Like with the beats, like having Keyblade do it forced me to follow him more. He's like a great producer. He puts stuff in a normal song structure. Like he knows what is gonna take to give the artist the easiest time to write a memorable song. Like one of my issues, like making my own beats, is like they're always all over the place, like 5 parts, and like given this opportunity, like to have Keyblade decide like the kind of the arrangement. Although I did a lot of rearranging, I was still like trying to follow like a pattern, and in those patterns, like I was trying to write what I'm trying to say in the simplest possible way. And there is some like florid language, but it's also like if you've listened to Hausu and you've listened to Wildfire and then Camouflage, you'll know like I've really toned it, I've really scaled it back.
man, and I'm a fan of all your projects so far. I mean, even Wildfire, I was such a big fan of like Wildfire and what it was becoming that I used to
Thank
have
you.
the videos of the live performances like saved on audio file before Wildfire came out
Oh,
because
that's so cool.
I was so hyped, man. And with that being said, I wanted to ask, like, with Fruiting Body about to come out, with Camouflage put out, with Wildfire put out, with anything put out as official or anything before that, would you say that Fruiting Body is your proudest piece of work? Do you have a proudest piece of work, or do you kind of all treat it like children, like equals?
They gotta be equals. I am extremely proud of this work because it represents like matured songwriting and like a lot of work recording and singing to get my voice like to another level that it was definitely not at before.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm really extremely proud of like the maturity of the record and like how calm it feels. So like when there's like moments of like discordance, like it's like really intentional. And I just feel like each record I'm the most proud of. Like I can't say that I'm not the most proud of any of them, like because they all represent something like going really hard into one thing or another. Like they have different values and like different purposes. And this one
Right.
is distinctly different, but I also think it forms a trilogy with the first two. And after this album, things will dramatically change.
Oh, that's kind of awesome to look at it that way in like a trilogy. That's really cool. Holy shit. Yeah, man. No, and that's a good way. I think that's a dope way to like, approach it and treat it out. That's why I even considered it. I was like, how do you look at your discography come this far, you know? What was I gonna say? With Fruiting Body, I wanted to ask if there was there was a plethora of videos coming with the album, or are you trying to keep it like low, maybe one or two more videos?
There's one more that's made, and that's gonna come out. And then I think I'm gonna go on the tour, and we're gonna see which song besides the singles is like people's favorite, and then I'll probably make a video for that one.
All right, that's what's up. Yeah. I like to kind of talk about future plans and stuff like that. I know that you have the album coming up, and I figured that there were plans that come up with that. Speaking of tour, how's that, or when does that start? That starts in June, right?
June 1st is the day of the album release. The show is in Seattle. I'm actually going to up to Seattle to put flyers up tonight with some of my friends.
That's
But yeah,
awesome,
it
man.
starts, and then we're doing the West Coast. It's all headline shows, and we've got like pretty sick local support acts in all the different cities, like bands and artists that I really like. Um, I feel like the shows are gonna each one is gonna be totally unique. And then in the fall, we're doing support for a bigger artist, doing the whole country again, and a little bit of
Awesome.
Canada.
Awesome. Awesome. You guys have speaking of live performance and stuff, you guys have that GBC show coming up, right? Like that one-off
Yeah, we
show.
do. That's gonna be crazy. It's everybody, every living member besides Dubs and Wicca, and who can't make it.
Hmm.
We're gonna do a big group set medley kind of on the stage at the same time. Do some collabs. It's at the So What Fest in Dallas, the 26th of June. I'm also doing a Fish Narc set at Oblivion Access Fest in Austin the 16th of June. So like driving back from tour, then flying to Texas, then flying back, then flying to Texas, and flying back. It's a lot of
Bi-
shit. But
It's
the
gonna be
GBC
hella
set's
jet
gonna be
lag.
crazy special. Like it's probably the most members on stage since the observatory in Santa Ana.
Yeah, man. Man, the last GBC show you guys had, or I remember that I wanted to go to was in like September of 2019, I think. Like something. It
Love
was in New
Gang tour.
York. Yeah, the Love
Love
Gang
Gang
tour.
tour. And that was only 4 members, so it was like
Uh
you
and
couldn't even call it.
that was the closest I could get to it, and I couldn't go. School was starting. It was terrible.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah, I was in my junior year, I think, starting my junior year of high
Love
school.
Gang tour. It feels like a million years ago.
Yeah, it really does. That's why I was like trying to put a date on it, and I was thinking even 2017. I was like, hell no, it wasn't 2017, it's 2019. Um, but yeah, that's awesome. And I don't want to like drag this along or anything, with the questions or anything. Um, so yeah, Fruiting Body, June 1st, and you got tour set up after that, and you're really only staying on the West Coast, right? Or like kind of?
Just for the West Coast leg, but we're gonna be doing like pretty much the whole 26 shows across North America in September and October to make up for missing East Coast, and then we're gonna be back in like Texas, the South, the East Coast, and the Midwest. We're gonna do headline shows in like spring 2024.
All right.
So there's
So you
gonna
guys
be
are
a lot of
planning
chances
at
to
you guys are
see.
planning ahead.
Trying to go crazy, yeah. There's going to be a lot of chances to see Fish Narc Band, and I honestly, if you have a chance to go to each one, I would recommend it because there's going to be so much. I'm keeping so much music going on between it. We're for sure going to change the sets. Like I'm not going to do the same set in the same city. It will never be the same. Like I have
I'm
to. It has to adapt and like add new stuff. So I want to encourage people, listeners or whatever, to come.
I'm excited. I'm definitely gonna show face, man. Every time you come to New York, I show up because your stage presence. My favorite shows to go to are Fish Narc shows, and that's not me trying to
Oh
guess
yeah,
or anything,
I appreciate that.
Hell
I
yeah,
appreciate it.
I think last time I went with my two friends and my boy Dean was really. You put the mic to him a couple times. I'm pretty sure it was cool. It
That's
was
great. I always do that when people are singing the words.
yeah. It's exactly. So I knew it was like I was like we were really engaged in the performance. But um, before we kind of like reach towards the wrap up, because I'm trying to, well, that's its own thing. It has its own question and everything. I wanted to ask, and it's kind of like we're kind of not, but on the thing, whenever we have anyone with tattoos or whatever, I kind of like to ask the meaning behind tattoos, kind of like a GQ tattoo tour, but on the Cult of Personality pod. And I like your tattoos a lot, man. I've seen you have like that green band or whatever around your arm, and I've always been intrigued by that. Just give
Oh yeah.
some of the meanings behind some of your body ink.
None of them really have that much meaning, honestly. They're mostly just kind of like touch and go.
Yeah, or even I don't know if there's any stories to tell behind it. If not, we can move on forward. However
I
you
have
feel.
a really funny tattoo on my leg that I did with a sewing needle and a pencil in this cabin that had one light, and it was like my friends and I we were like doing this like art residency in Morelia in Michoacan, Mexico. And we were like traveling in a rural place like on an off day, and we had gone to the place that a town called Quiroga, where they claimed was the birthplace of carnitas. Like, and we tried like they had all these different carnitas stands, like which is like people listening like a braised pork.
Yeah, it's like the meat on the pole, right? Like they cut that.
That's pastor, I think. I'm pretty sure they do carnitas in a big in a big pot. That's what it looked
Oh,
like.
yeah,
Maybe I'm thinking I barely remember this because we ate so much pork like for free. Like people were kept giving us these samples.
yeah.
And we ate so much pork, and we were like staying in this cabin. We were kind of like drunk afterwards, like stuffed on pork, like doing these stick and poke tattoos. We had bought this funny sewing kit from a store. It was this really old sewing kit. It's a dull ass needle, jerry rigged the whole setup, and like we all tried to do tattoos, and like I gave myself a really funny one, but it hurt so bad and it was so fucked up. It still looks hilarious and
What
terrible. But
what is it of?
it's a it's like a kind of like a the coil butthole logo. It looks like a sun.
I think so. I think so. It sounds very familiar.
Um, but yeah, like none of my tattoos are super meaningful. Like I got a Peep tattoo that is meaningful. Obviously, most of them are just kind of aesthetic and like I love my tattoos. I sort of wish I didn't quite have as much color. I had a little more black and white stuff,
Yeah,
but I've taken kind of a break from getting tats lately, so I may go back to it.
I feel you. Yeah, man. I yeah, that's cool. And I feel you, especially like on the less color, more black and gray. I mean, I'm kind of a fan of both. I'm kind of have like well, I don't really have anything going on, but like I'm trying to do a half and half thing. But
I like your color tats. They look cool.
thank you, bro. This is yeah, my American traditional thing going on.
That's a good, whoever did that is clearly really good. The yellow looks insane.
Thank you. Yeah, this was upstate. This was Middletown, New York.
Cool.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Um but yeah, man. Now I'm trying to think. Well, this is where comes in handy because I think that we've had a great conversation. I think we've covered a lot of cool topics and stuff. I'm not sure if I can think of anything beyond. But this is cool. This is the cool part because this is your interview, Fish Narc. This is your thing. I pretty much if there's anything I didn't cover that you want. Oh wait, there is one thing I didn't cover. Never mind. Hold on. We'll save that for later.
What's
Um, you with bleh, I can't speak. The mushrooms, foraging wild mushrooms, not the project, even though that's a great project, and maybe we should talk about that. I love that project, but you are very educated on mushrooms. How did that come to be? Was that just from childhood, and how did that evolve throughout your life?
I was just into picking chanterelles, which is like an edible species from the woods with my parents, from childhood, and I was pretty much the only one I knew how to pick. But I loved getting out, and we would do it every year. It was always a special time to go with my folks. So when I moved back to the Northwest in 2020, and I was, all of a sudden a lot closer to the habitats, and I wasn't a kid anymore. I could just drive myself. I realized, oh, they were everywhere, and I could go forage all the time. That led me to like foraging fuck tons that year, and I ate so many mushrooms. I kind of ate myself sick of them for a year, but it also made me interested in other species because I was encountering different stuff in the woods constantly and taking pictures of it. Like fuck, I saw thousands of different species. It felt like probably more like hundreds, but still, it piqued my interest, and one of the benefits of living here has been like access to a lot of different habitats, and like I just went out all the time because like that was how I was like giving myself inspo to do music was spending time outside. So I just kind of read field guides. I used iNatural. This is a really cool app, the website you can use to learn about organisms that are existing around you. And I read books. I joined the local mushroom club. If there isn't one in your town, like you can always like look at the website of the nearest society and kind of get a sense for how far it extends. Like there is a lot of community. I think there's also TikTok, and like I don't think all of it's probably that interesting or informative, but there's definitely got to be some people on various social medias who can teach you a lot. Definitely learn a lot about plants that way from YouTube and from social media, and met cool people who've taught me that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been a passion of mine since I moved back to the Northwest.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. And that's cool because I mean, like when you first think of mushrooms, I feel like everyone thinks of hallucinogenics and stuff like
Yeah, they
that. But
do.
you just being into it just, for the sake of, mushrooms, just mushrooms. It doesn't have to have, there's nothing to it. It's just, it's really
Doesn't have to be
cool.
useful.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool to just have that conversation and talk about it because, it's not every day you meet a mushroom forager. It's really cool.
Hell
Uh,
yeah.
and then segueing into one more thing that I just popped into my head. One of my favorite projects from you is foraging wild mushrooms. Just to touch on it really quick, how did that come to be, and how did that project? Was it just like a compilation of songs that you were like, "Hey, these are pretty good. I should put this out." Like,
Yeah, basically, like I was just realizing like I wanted to do it, and I had a lot of good stuff to put out, and it was time to drop. But it's kind of a mistake because the songs were older, and none of the artists were that excited about them, so they didn't really promote it that much. I have a ton of songs with Black Cray, and he's just hard to get a hold of, so I never really got the okay on them, and then too much time passed. But I'm really glad at least two of them came out.
right,
Um, yeah, I wanted to share. I'd also like it came out after I've been living here, so I wanted to share my interest that had this new found passion of mine and interest that I cultivated since leaving the social sphere of those people back with my friends who were artists, and like bring them to the woods. So that's how the documentary came to pass. Like we wanted to bring all the artists on a mushroom hunt. And the East Coast, like we didn't find anything because it hadn't rained. So it's funny.
yeah, yeah,
But the West Coast, we found a ton of stuff. That shit put me in the hole forever. That was so expensive. I'll never make money from any of my records because I spent so much damn money making that documentary.
man, I gotta watch it over, man. I'm pretty sure I checked it out, but I gotta watch it over. Especially now that you're talking
People
about how
should
much.
watch that doc, man. That shit was so expensive. Watch that shit. Make it
Yeah,
worth it.
people watching over here, you better watch that shit. Put some
Foraging
money
wild
back
mushrooms,
into
the
the
doc.
pocket. Come on now. Hell yeah. No, yeah, that's crazy, but that's really cool, man. And that song, I mean, there's so many great songs on that project, so it kind of sucks that nobody was like. I understand why people weren't as super excited about it, and stuff, but it's a great project nonetheless. It stands very well on.
Thank you.
One thing I want to ask that popped in my head. I don't know really where I've been updated or educated on it, but like, what's the next with Fish Narc merch or vinyls? Or I still only have my Wildfire vinyl. I'm waiting on another Fish Narc vinyl.
I want to do more vinyls. I don't have the funds to press them myself, and there haven't been any offers. So shirts, posters, plushies. That's going to be on tour. We're going to have all of them on tour. I'm trying to get a store set up so I can do my own merch and ship it. Excuse me.
No, no
So
worries.
keep your eyes peeled, like check in stuff. I'll be posting about it. I try to post about everything I do. Social media is not the best place for me anymore to get through to people, but I am, keeping it very much updated. So if people are curious, like just, look at my Instagram or my link tree um, for merch stuff. Come to the shows. That's the guaranteed way to get it.
There you go. Yeah. Damn, that was one thing I did miss out. I don't know what it was, and I don't know if you even remember, but when I went and saw you in July of this past summer or whatever, did y'all run out of the green frog plushies at that point in New
Yeah,
York?
we ran out. We
I
ran out.
was I was looking forward to it, and I
I'm
looked
sorry, man.
around and I was like, damn,
You said I'd need more. We didn't realize. We're gonna make a shit ton for the next time you have an opportunity to see me. There will be green frogs.
All right, bet. I'll show face for sure. All right. moving forward now, this kind of leads us towards the wrap up. And before I wrap it up for good, with the episode, I like to ask my guests, if there's anything, any corner or crevice or whatever, any topic that I didn't cover that you feel should have been discussed on your episode.
Nah,
And
not at all. We're good. I honestly got a pee, so wrap up sounds perfect.
all right, cool. Yeah. So I won't leave you here long. So this pretty much leads to the wrap up, which goes a little like this. Oh, wait, there's a final question. Um, Fish Narc, what do you got going on the next day, week, month, year, whatever, decade, millennium? And it doesn't have to be music related. It could be anything you got going on.
I'm turning my home property into a fairy tale magic garden with delicious berries everywhere and cactus.
That's awesome. That sounds blissful even. That's great. I hope
Yeah,
that goes well.
thank you.
All right, so I'll wrap it up now, which is just a whole gist of this. Pretty much, this is the Cult of Personality podcast, hosted by yours truly, Mikeymcchoppa. With me today was Fish Narc. Thank you for sitting with me for the last hour or so, and I'm sorry for putting a hold onto your pee.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Take
man.
care.
And thank you guys for, listening for the last hour, all that stuff, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music. We'll see you next week, Mikey Monday. Peace out from Mikeymcchoppa and Fish Narc and gang.